Hello friends. Welcome back to the What Savvy Said podcast. I am Savannah, aka the Savvy behind What Savvy Said. You're doing things a little bit differently. So I normally film this podcast in my office, talking to a wall and feeling like I don't really connect with you guys. It just feels like I'm talking out into space a little bit more. So I've wanted to do the video format of this for a bit. So if you're listening to this in the car, please know that there is now hopefully a video version of this on YouTube and not just an audio format in a different way. So I love doing chatty videos, but I feel like they're not always the best, and I love listening to like the more chatty stuff while I'm getting ready, while I'm doing other things. Sometimes I love to watch people when they're doing a podcast, but I also wanted to give you guys the option for us to have these sit-down conversations in a way that just felt like it served everyone's time a little bit more, but also allowed us to have the conversations that I think are important as we all kind of go on this journey together. So today, I really wanted to talk about some of the changes that I'm making and why I've decided to make some of those changes, because I feel like they're necessary. I feel like it's a conversation that we need to have, partly for me to close the door, partly for you guys to understand, and for all of us to really kind of be in that same space. I want to have that kind of conversation. I think that acknowledging things is really important. And I'm hoping that, for me and you, that this just brings us to a space where you understand the things that maybe you don't always get to see, because people become more and more aware of influencers. I know that it can seem totally random, or it can seem like, things are just changing overnight. So I love sharing the growth process with you. I love understanding how people have gotten to the place that they've gotten to and kind of their thought process for it, because I find that when I'm in that space of really just looking for guidance and maybe needing to know that somebody else has gone through it, when I have that reference point, even if it's not the same, it just helps me maybe see it in a different light or step out of my own situation. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about why I am changing niches, so to speak, and just the mindset that I have around the wellness community and some of the things that I want to change for myself and just the journey that I've been on. So this is a little bit of a 75 Love update, but this is also just an update of kind of the last 6 months to a year, few years. We're going to kind of cover it all. So let's get into it. I'm trying to not drink my coffee every 5 seconds, but here we are. I started my blog, the original blog, Savvy and Savory, in 2016. And when I started the blog, my original intention was to have it be a space that I could help my friends live a healthier lifestyle. And so much of my healing journey in the last few months has been based around this idea of, what if you believed you were enough? Like, if at some point in time, if you realized that you were enough, and that what you wanted was enough, and that everything in that space was completely valid, and you didn't feel like you had to prove stuff, or you could just show up, and like the fact that you were there, you are worthy. As I looked back, I've seen just so much of how choices that I've been making, or choices that I have made in that regard, have been in order to find my enoughness and to feel like I am worthy of whatever. And for the longest time, especially those of you who kind of live in the fat funny friend area, which I don't know that I fully consider myself that. I think I lived more in a space of being the smart friend who always knew stuff and had her shit together, who happened to be curvier. But I started the blog with the intention of having this inkling that I was going to be moving home. So at the time I was living in Atlanta, I was working in film. I'd been chasing that dream for years. It was really, really hard, and it was really inconsistent, which is very classic for getting into film. That's not something people talk about a lot, especially in the assistant roles. It's almost, unless you have financial support from somebody else or can pull off a miracle, it can be very challenging to actually do it. If you're on Twitter and you follow any of the assistants on Twitter or anything like that, it's a great place if you're interested in film, to like conversations. All of the writers are on Twitter. If you want to know about writing and you are interested in that bubble and you are not on Twitter, get on Twitter. All of the writers are there. But a lot of that journey, I kind of had a point where I thought, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And I was glad I did it. And I still love film, and there's still a place in my heart for film. And I very much will bring that back into my circle. But I needed to see it from the side that I did. And I started to think, well, I want to start a blog. I'd followed the Anna editor forever. I was a big fan of all of that kind of UK blogger group. I'd started blogs on and off over the years, and I really wanted to go and kind of pursue it, but I had no idea how to do it. And a lot of the tools that are available now that make blogging a bit easier and make blogging a bit more accessible and aren't necessarily things that people chase. I think a lot of people want the fame side of it, which is totally valid. But blogging is almost easier to start now than it was to start 5 or 6 years ago because of SEO and all of the social media platforms and kind of learning how to do that more successfully. But when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. And I really thought, okay, well, I can teach my friends how to be healthier. Like, that's something that people always come to me for. But I had no idea that I was not in a great space with my health at the time. I would figure that out like 8 months later. And it was really, I had no clue how to do it. Because at the time, I followed blogs like Nutrition Stripped and Minimalist Baker, which I don't know what their popularity is now. They've both shifted in different ways. Minimalist Baker is still one of the best for getting a good, solid vegan recipe, especially if you're wanting comfort food. Hands down, Dana's got that covered. But I had no idea what that would look like. So I kind of dallied with it, but I was still doing film. And so, come that like August when I decided to leave film, because at that time I was just feeling very financially overwhelmed. I had a feeling I needed to move back to my hometown to help my mom. With my then 88-year-old stepfather who broke his hip literally the first week that I left for the production in Kentucky, which is a whole other story. But I had a feeling that I needed to come home, and I had been feeling that for a while, which is why I started the blog, knowing that at some point my mom would want to retire and I wanted to be able to travel with her, and I just wanted more flexibility with my life. And so I started it with the intention of loving all of the content that I was seeing from other people. And really, that's probably the content that I wanted to be creating, but I didn't feel like I could do that. I didn't feel like I was worthy of that. I had no idea how to do that. Like, I loved makeup. I love fashion. I hadn't really figured out how to dress myself yet. And with set, there was no dressing yourself for set. I went from like years of being in high school and then being in a college sorority and then kind of a 9-to-5 where it was business casual, whatever. And then I went on set where it's just wear whatever can help you survive 12 to 16 hours of walking today. Like, that is the fashion for today. And so I did that full journey, and I dabbled with how to figure out how to do things, and I really had no idea. So we rebranded the blog in like 2017, and I started backtrack. We rebranded the blog in 2018 because in 2017 life was freaking chaotic as hell. So 2018 is when I decided to rebrand the blog, and I still hadn't quite figured out what I wanted to do. I really wanted to be in lifestyle, and lifestyle is a slightly more challenging group to live in. I really enjoyed that, but I kind of figured out what worked for me. 2018 to 2019, I really figured out what kind of diet I needed to follow. A lot of the things that I think that were my questions as far as wellness goes, I had solved. So wanting to be a wellness blogger was a bit more challenging for me because I didn't look like wellness bloggers. I didn't have, and even then, wellness blogging isn't necessarily a thing. It was something I wanted to be a thing, and I'm not saying that it can't be a thing. Obviously, Kourtney Kardashian has made a living out of it. There's Goop, there's Chalkboard Mag, there are plenty of things to that capacity, but I wanted the more fun side of that, and I wasn't in a position to really pursue that because part of the reason that I was in my hometown and even being able to really kind of consider this in that way was because I was acting as a caretaker for my parents. So I was dabbling with it, and a lot of the ways I was looking online who was kind of successful, and everybody looks exactly the same. And I think I've seen a lot of people on TikTok recently, maybe it's just my algorithm, but as a lot of people are really kind of undoing disordered eating and understanding what that looks like, and even more so the different pockets that that's translated over the years, especially because it went from the like Kayla Itsines Bikini Body Guide and Blogilates and those kinds of women who have a certain body type of their own, whether it's natural, whether or not they're constantly pursuing that, that's a different kind of conversation, to a lot of the gym fitness influencers who live a certain lifestyle and promote a certain thing. And I think there's kind of a journey on the wellness scope for everyone. Like, you have to figure out what works for you, and I think that's very hard to do, specifically when you don't look like a wellness blogger, when you aren't over 5'6" with abs and having a certain look and a certain gym aesthetic. Like, it wasn't for me, because when I started to really kind of dive into wellness for the second time, my goal was to heal my hormonal acne. Like that was the vibe for me. And I don't regret that journey. I have had a lot of time and healing that for myself, and I've learned a lot of things. But at the same time, as I continued on the journey of learning about all of the things wellness and really discovering what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and what I needed to change to really heal, I started feeling disconnected from being able to fully tell the journey and feel like I could sell the journey. And I think that's the one thing about being an influencer. And it wasn't necessarily why I got started. You know, I really wanted to talk about the things that I loved. I really wanted to be able to share the stuff that I loved. And as I continued, I realized that I really like the storytelling side of things. And even more so now, as I've been doing it for several years, I love being able to give an escape, a moment of levity, to give some hope, to give some perspective, to give the ability for somebody else to see themselves kind of in the future when you are able to produce content in that way. And I really love that side of it, but I had a really hard time feeling fully settled in my ability to sell what I was talking about, because at the time I wasn't making enough money off of it. I didn't feel like I could financially afford to do all of the things on my own that I was saying or would be saying were kind of what you needed to be buying. And it felt like a lot. And I am one of those people that I can happily share my experience, but knowing where I lived and knowing who I was surrounded by and knowing who my friends were, and knowing that if I looked at every single one of them and said, this is how much I spend on this per month, and this is what it costs to kind of maintain this lifestyle, and knowing that it really wasn't feasible for a lot of us, like it just wasn't financially there, I had a really hard time with that. And especially when it comes to wellness, where you're in a space of, it's not just a one-time thing. Like, we're going to talk about the niche that I'm switching to, and you guys will probably know this based on my content, and really wanting to shift more towards fashion and luxury because I've always had a passion for that. But with wellness, if I'm talking to you about meat quality, and I believe wholeheartedly in meat quality, I've seen the major differences in meat quality and what an impact it has on my body to go grass-fed and grain-free and to go pasture-raised. Like, I know how much better I feel when I am making those choices, but for me, I have a really hard time with the fact that wellness just feels at the level that it's required to truly be in the best mental and physical shape of your life. It's not the most financially accessible for everyone. And I get that there are plenty of nutritionists out there, and I know for myself and part of my journey, and I think I talked about this in a YouTube video a few months back, kind of having like a diet mentality relapse of, I spent too much time on social media during the pandemic. And if I probably would have spent less time on things, and you know, everything works out for the way that it does, but I set myself back a lot, and I'm really having to heal now because I tried to go to a space of, sure, I can intuitive eat, sure, I can eat like all these nutritionists talk about, sure, I can do all of these things. Like, I hadn't put myself on this really long journey of discovering what works for me, and there's a lot of voices in that way, and it can take a lot of time to discover. But I have a really hard time when I can't look at somebody I'm really close to, or somebody who I know is really struggling with that in my immediate circle, and feel comfortable with saying, I really love this salad dressing. It's from Primal Kitchen, which I do. They're the only salad dressings that I use. It's probably anywhere from $6 to $9 a bottle, and I understand that that's completely ridiculous for some people. Again, it's completely normal for some people, but if I can't look at one of my closest family members and say that without feeling like this is completely insane, like that I'm telling you that this is something that you should buy, but I know right now that you're very much trying to single mom it and do all of these things, I had a really big disconnect there, because it requires you to invest month after month after month. And there are plenty of women who do it successfully and who have major health conditions and have really found the passion for that. And I got to a point where I knew what I needed to do for my body and the variations that it looked like for being a wellness blogger, influencer, whatever, was to either kind of go maybe down the Whitney Simmons path of creating, you know, what I eat in a day and the way that she does, talking about her psoriasis, creating workout videos, which is totally great. or to potentially go down the Daniel Walker path of talking about healing your body with food and making recipes, or to go down the Kelty path of doing all of these different challenges. And Natasha does them too, but all of these different things just didn't feel like they worked for me. Like once I realized that I really thrive on a Fab4 diet, which is created by Kelly LeVeque, I know that I need a certain amount of sleep. I know that I need to eat a certain way. I know that certain things work for me. It just felt like I needed to preach to get people on my page because people weren't fully there, and what I was asking people to do just didn't feel sustainable in a way that maybe everybody was ready for, even in a way that I was ready for. And so I had a really hard time getting in that bubble and really feeling like I could sell things consistently if I was looking at certain people in my life and knowing that they couldn't afford that. And so I've talked about Money Mentality Makeover on the blog, on maybe the podcast, on my YouTube channel, on a few places. When I started going through the process of healing my relationship with money and looking at what that meant for me and looking at the content that I was creating and looking at the brands that I was working with and just looking at all of the things and looking around at my life, and I just felt very off. Like it wasn't there anymore. I'd been struggling for a while to really find my rhythm with things. I had not been feeling like my full self. I was feeling burnt out. I was really trying to create in a way that didn't vibe with me, and it also just felt like the patterns that I was repeating, like I could totally figure out how to do it. And I'm not saying that I won't be creating wellness content at all, because I really do want to talk about kind of the ways that I found to naturally deal with PCOS and all of that on my YouTube channel without having to feel like I need to sell some kind of wellness challenge. Like I just want it to be more natural and organic, and it to finally come from a place of, this is how I'm choosing to live. I've chosen to live this way. I hope that it helps you. But I had a lot of guilt, and I mentioned this in a video earlier this year of really just wanting to release the guilt this year and to not have to live in that space. But as I kind of went through the process, I had a day of, I don't remember how it clicked, but I had a moment where it was like, who would you be right now if you believed you were enough as a teenager? Like that, like one question just kind of popped in my head. And I thought, wow, like I feel like I would be a completely different person. Like I was feeling really frustrated with a lot of stuff. And I was feeling really frustrated with the societal fact that, like, you know, obviously there's a certain image that wellness looks like, and there are certain people it seems that it just automatically happens for. And I felt like I was screaming into a void and not a single person was hearing me. And I was so tired of screaming, and I was so tired of showing up and feeling like I always had to prove myself and that I needed to be ready for a fight and ready for a battle, and I was exhausted. And part of it comes with wellness is that, and I'm sure that there are plenty of wellness influencers who do not give a shit, and they don't think twice about it. But between being in a medical family and having a degree in English, and because of that degree in English, knowing that when you're writing something, when you are creating a piece of content, when you're writing a paper, when you're doing anything, you need to be able to prove that shit. Like you need to be able to back it up. And if you can't do that, if I can't show up and be ready to explain this, then I'm not going to talk about it. And it just felt like a constant never-ending battle of keeping up with things and constantly having to tweak things and feeling like you always had to be on top of it. And I was done. I was exhausted. I was over it. And I realized that a lot of it for me was feeling as though I brought value to a space because I was needed, because I could talk about these things, because I could, you know, be this person, this resource, this whatever. And there was a point probably like a year and a half ago where I thought, what happens if you just say, I don't know, when somebody asks you something? And there's not this expectation that you know everything or you know a little bit about all of the things that, like, to be relevant, to be worthy of having this conversation and to be able to grace the situation, that you can bring something to the table. Like, your existence is enough. As we can see, I've really been kind of diving into that. And so I just got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't, and I felt like I was battling a never-ending battle, and it also felt like it shouldn't be this hard. Like, I'm one of those people who firmly believes that if it's going to work, it's going to work probably within a certain amount of time. And that's not to say that it's not going to work, but that there might be something else that you need to do, or that if it's you've been trying this hard for this long. There's something that you're missing. There's something you're not hearing. There's something that the universe is like, I have a better path for you. And I need you to understand that that is why I'm not letting you go in this direction. Like, I'm just not. And I got to that point and I thought, I have always, probably more so in the last like 5 or 6 years when I really let myself fall in love with fashion. But I have always enjoyed it. And I think once I finally understood how to dress myself, and once I finally started following certain people's content and really appreciating the overall aesthetic and the ways that stories are told with clothes. Like you guys follow me on Instagram, I'm always obsessed with fashion and the ways that they're the first thing that you see on a character. That's the first impression that you get of anybody on any show. If you're watching The Gilded Age right now, the costumes are phenomenal, and they had all this time extra because of the pandemic to really make them. But shows like that and Reign and Dynasty and Heart of Dixie, a lot of these are designed by the same people, but so much of the atmosphere of building a human being and like your experience with a story is costumes. And we do that every day. We put on an outfit every day and we give ourselves the opportunity to feel a certain way about ourselves. And I will have people who will always say to me, like, I can't believe you're wearing heels. And I have looked at them and been like, I'm wearing heels right now because it's literally how I get in this headspace. Like, I wore heels to the dentist recently, and it's because it makes me feel like I'm on it. It makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I'm in this space. I don't feel frumpy and blah. I feel like even if I'm not in the full space of it, because I put the right shoes on, because I put an extra few minutes into this outfit, I feel better for it and I can channel that energy a little bit more. If you ever see me in like full sweats in public, you should probably know that something's wrong. Like that's kind of the standard for friendship for me. I can't say that I know how the next season, how the next steps of this are gonna go. I really want to focus all of my content on creating more of an everyday luxury. I want to bring recipes from really gorgeous restaurants to you guys wherever you are. I want to create a space that allows you to kind of see yourself in that luxury, and maybe it looks different for you, because everyone that I've seen in the luxury lifestyle fashion space all looks kind of the same. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just think that there's been a very specific, very thin, there's a very specific outlook on that. And I hope that I can bring something different. I definitely have just weight loss goals for myself that I will be sharing along the way, but it's nothing crazy. It's more of, I have done myself a disservice in how I've treated my body and my mind for the last however many months. And so there's some weight that I want to shed just to be comfortable and being able to do the activities that I want to do. But I hope that I can get to a space where we are able to look at luxury fashion and see somebody who is a 6 to 10 in that range and has some curves and is shorter and looks a little bit different, and you guys have the opportunity to see yourself in that way. But that I can also talk about the best of certain luxury beauty products, and that we can really bring the full scope of that to merge the things that I love about fashion and styling pieces, and that it goes from more of a space of, I see a lot of people who do luxury hauls, and those are great, but I'm somebody who really likes to curate my wardrobe. So I go seasonally through and I pick out the pieces that I feel like are really the best of the best for what I want, and the things that I feel like I'm missing and that I really love and really want to style. And I do that I say with every season, but really with spring and summer, because that's like 3/4 to 5/6 of what the weather here is in Florida. And then from there we kind of adjust. I would love to expand my winter wardrobe. I have like none of it because I seem to always rent it every year. But I like to curate that, and I want to be able to pick these gorgeous pieces like the Versace shoes that I've been using a dupe for recently, and style them so that if you are in that position of wanting to have a luxury piece in your wardrobe, that you can feel like you're fully getting the best of it because you're styling it. Like, you're getting to see it, you're getting to wear it. It's not that just that you're owning some kind of piece, it's that you're owning it and it makes you feel good and you're getting tons of use out of it. So there will be more fashion content on the blog. There will be more fashion content on YouTube. There will be more fashion content on my Instagram, of course, and TikTok. But I really just wanted to kind of acknowledge the shift that we're doing. And like I said, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to create wellness content. But I think it was very important for me to acknowledge that in order for me to be able to move forward, that I really needed to acknowledge that this was going to be a luxury space, because I was watching a video recently of somebody who I love, who creates a lot of really great content and creates a lot of really science-backed content, but it was just one of those, it's in the wellness community. I'm listening to this video and they were promoting Peak Tea. Love Peak Tea. They sent me product years ago. I recently bought the matcha, which is what we were talking about in this video, and I looked at how much it costs for a box of matcha from Peak Tea, and it was like $53. And that's just, again, I don't want to say that I've been ignorant to it, because I think that it can be one of those things that like you can very easily just pass off as like a luxury. But I think it's really hard for me to justify, as somebody who hasn't had insurance in years, who is somebody who has really pieced together her own wellness journey, the fact that if with a luxury item, like if I'm sharing something with you, if I'm sharing an experience with you, it's a memory, it's a story, it's something you can save up and look forward to, and you can do, and you can have so much fun. But if I'm telling you to buy, whatever tea for this month every month, that's a lot of money after a while. And you could have bought your first pair of Louboutins that are going to make you feel fire every single day for however long, until you realize you have to replace the tip on those. I need to do that on mine. And it just was a space that I could no longer fully inhabit without acknowledging the privilege that comes with wellness, specifically in the US. So, not saying I won't be talking about it going forward. I will definitely be talking about it. I will also be acknowledging the cost factor in some of the things, and not just promoting wellness for the sake of wellness, because there are a lot of things that I love that might be totally gimmicky, but I want to be able to say that they could be totally gimmicky without it being like, oh, you're a wellness blogger, you're not supposed to say that. Like, I love lots of the different mushroom additives and all of those things, but I know that it's not feasible for everybody to spend $100 to $200 on all these little like teaspoon things that you're going to add to a bulletproof coffee in the afternoon. So we're going to acknowledge this space for what it is, and I'm hoping that I can share content that gives you, like I said, everyday luxury. So maybe a really nice recipe that I have encountered in my journeys on 38 or anywhere else and recreate it at home, so that you get to make it when you can't travel, or when you get to go on an adventure, you get to save and spend and treat yourself to something that you can trust that I've taken the journey for you ahead of time. I asked all the questions. I have been as diligent as I need to be, because we all know that I am not afraid to write a lukewarm / I try to not write negative reviews, but there are some things that I just cannot get behind. So that is where we're at with things. So you will definitely see a lot more luxury lifestyle travel content going forward, with the caveat that if I can find a dupe, I don't want to say dupe, because I truly admire how fashion designers create things, and the copyright doesn't exist the same in fashion. I learned this years ago from a friend who actually studied fashion. But I want to say a similar version. I don't want to say a dupe, because I think that completely disrespects the original creator of said item. But I will do my best to always link whatever alternative similar version of something I can within whatever post that I'm doing, so that you guys have that option. And sometimes they don't exist. I will definitely continue to update my favorite places to find fashion finds that are under the $200 mark. There's a whole section on the blog specifically with things that I'm loving that are under $200, and we'll continue to do that. I'm sure I'm going to do a staples video on things that I love there, because that's one of those things. I am not the cleanest person. I get makeup all over stuff. I spill stuff all the time. So a lot of my like bodysuits and basic staples, even like this guy, they come from certain spaces where like if I have to buy a bunch of them, or I want to buy a bunch of them in different colors, I don't feel bad if I ruin them all the time, because I know that I'm going to. So we will do that, but it just felt like it was time to move forward with the acknowledgement of why I'd been doing what I'd been doing for so long, and kind of the lie underneath all of that. and being able to step in the space going forward that I wanted to step into wholeheartedly, and something that I've always been really passionate about, but felt like I really had to grant myself the authority to do. And we can have another conversation about how to take a step in the direction of your dreams when you don't feel safe in them, or you feel unsure of them, or if you feel like nobody's showing up. Like, I always really wanted somebody to like show up and be like, hey, you should try this thing, completely out of nowhere. Like, for somebody to like see that in you without you having to be able to acknowledge it. That was something I always really wanted, and it was not happening for me because I needed to come to that space for myself. So I am taking that step forward, and I look forward to kind of doing that on the journey with you guys. So yeah, I have big things that I'm manifesting for that. I will dive into all of those things in other episodes and kind of what that looks like for me, and once we kind of get more past it, because right now a lot of it still feels very like I'm asking for some big things from the universe right now. I'm asking for a lot of support in a lot of ways and being very clear and more concise on it, and it's been quite an experience of getting a lot of things that I'm like, I really don't want that, but I asked for vagueness with it, so I'm getting it. So we'll continue on that journey. But I hope that if you guys are in a space right now where maybe you just can't figure out why you aren't happy there anymore, and you're looking for another direction, you're looking to kind of move forward, that my journey will help inspire your journey and maybe inspire you to see something that you weren't seeing before. So that is all I have for you guys today. So if you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. If you want to watch it in video form, come hang out on YouTube with me, because you get to see my lovely hair and, you know, the outfits that we're currently styling / have styled for you guys already. The video for that one live tonight, or it's going live in like an hour. I will try to upload new podcast episodes every week. I'm not 100% sure how we're going to do podcasts right now, because I am a solo entrepreneur for the time being. We're manifesting a manager, kids. Like, let's just pray she comes in. But yeah, come follow along on Instagram. I'm getting back into the rhythm of posting on stories there daily, but there's always content on one of the platforms. So the best way to know about all of the content weekly is to check out the newsletter, because even if I'm not posting it on Instagram, I try to get the newsletter out to you every week, along with a bit of motivation for what I'm learning, what I'm feeling, just the things that are really inspiring me. So I love you. It is a good day to have a good day, and I hope you all have a beautiful day wherever you are. Bye, guys.